Back in June of 2022, during the road to Scarlet and Violet's release, I made a video about every dual typing that had gone unused at the time. It was a really fun video to make, but a lot has already changed since then now that the games are actually out. Today, we'll be looking at the unused typings that still remain in the series, but before that, I'd also like to look at the dual typings that were introduced to the series of Gen 9. Without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. Before we get started though, we have a brand new exclusive series over on Mystic Umbreon Shorts. I'm going to be taking a Pokemon of your guys' choice and seeing how well it performs in a Scarlet and Violet playthrough. Should said Pokemon be on your team? This series will go up once a week every Sunday, so be sure to head over to Mystic Umbreon Shorts to check that out. Also, over on Mystic Reads, I'm reading the Yaju Sanin a Naruto fanfic and Road to be a Pokemon Master Kanto edition, where Ash and Serena have a Kanto adventure together. I will leave links for both of these channels in the description and in the ad card above. In the previous unused typings video, there were 17 unused dual typings, but now there are only 10. So let's take a look at the 7 typings that actually made it in Scarlet and Violet. Let's start with Scovillain, a fire grass Pokemon. The concept of this Pokemon is pretty much what everyone was expecting, and it's definitely not a bad Pokemon. But I'm not the biggest fan of the execution. It has good offensive power, but not too much else. I wish it had a higher base stat total for maybe the speed stat to take better advantage of it. It's got a pretty solid moveset however, and the typing combo does allow you to do a lot. In my unused typings video from June, I said it was easy to imagine a Chili Pepper-esque Pokemon of some kind with this typing. And yeah, that's basically what we got. It's actually a bit disappointing though design-wise. There's nothing wrong with it, but it really doesn't stand out aesthetically. Next, there's Lokix, a Bug Dark Pokemon. Now this one I really like. It's got a pretty solid design that works perfectly for the typing, and it's also got a good stat distribution, being very fast with high physical attack. Unfortunately, with only 450 base stat total, it ends up being pretty fragile, without much going into its defenses. But still, even though it has its fair share of weaknesses and isn't really the best, I think it's really fun to use. I'd consider it a successful introduction of the dual typing. Another typing combo that was put into the new games is Ground Fighting with Great Tusk. They really put in a strong impression with this thing's 570 base stat total, boasting high attack, defense, and bulk. Even its 87 speed isn't that bad. Only problem is that its type combo has a lot of weaknesses. And with that low special defense, those pesky psychic types are going to be a huge problem for it. I still really like this one, but don't have too much else to say about it. It's essentially like some sort of ancient variant of Donphan, and yeah, it looks cool. Electric Fighting ended up getting 2 Pokemon somehow, and I think both are pretty good. Palmot has a really cool moveset and great physical attack and speed. It's also probably one of the cutest Pokemon in this series and one of the best Pikachu clones. I even predicted that this type would end up being a Pikachu clone, and I think what they came up with for a design was better than what I actually had in mind. The other electric fighting type we got is Iron Hands, which looks like a cool futuristic version of Hariyama. I think this guy's insane bulk and attack speak for itself. The only thing I don't like here is that both Pokemon aren't exactly the most original design-wise for what is a new type combo, but I think it all worked out pretty well anyway. And now for the inevitable Iron Valiant mention. Look, Gardevoir is somehow in yet another one of my videos in some form. It figures that this would be the Fairy Fighting type. Some type of Gardevoir and Gallade fusion is pretty interesting. Offensively, this typing is really great, and it's got the stats to support it. That being said, nothing here is too surprising for something that feels like it's related to those 2 Pokemon. So I'll spare you any further gushing over yet another powerful Paradox Pokemon. Next, we have the Poison Steel Pokemon, Reverum. Now, I like this one in the Team Star battles, but overall, this evolution line isn't exactly my thing. Though for those of you who have been wanting a Pokemon that is basically a car, this guy was made for you. It's incredible defensively until Earthquake turns it into scrap. It's actually pretty decent offensively too. Overall, I'm not entirely sure how great it is compared to some of these other Pokemon like Valiant in competitive long term, but I think people will find an interesting use with the Pokemon with this typing wherever it stays in the meta. The last one to mention is the normal poison type, being Grafaiai. I wasn't expecting them to introduce this one just yet, since some people may not see some of these normal type combos too inherently interesting in the same way that Fire Grass is. That being said, it's actually a very good typing with only 2 weaknesses and 4 resistances, and a pretty decent move pool too. It's also yet another Pokemon with solid speed and attack power. Its 485 base stat total isn't the best, but it makes the most of what it has. A part of me feels like this would have been a better fit for Galar. But at the same time, Gen 9 introduced a bunch of great fighting type Pokemon, meaning most of the normal types would be in trouble and out of place. So in a way, it does fit well mechanically here, being paired with Poison, and is better off than something like normal Ice would have been. And speaking of normal Ice, let's get right into it with the dual typings that remain unused after Scarlet and Violet. I originally said that a normal Ice type could be something similar to Delibird as some type of fisherman. Well, they did give us a new Delibird variant of some kind with Iron Bundle, but it's a Water-Ice type. One that's far more powerful than any of us would have imagined a Delibird variant to ever be. This typing would be hard to justify, since Ice is notoriously horrible defensively and doesn't really do anything to benefit the normal typing. I still think a Fisherman type gimmick would be interesting for the Pokemon design-wise though, but you can kind of do anything with something that's paired with the normal type as far as visual designs go. And like normal Ice, normal Bug is another type combo that a lot of people don't seem to be too interested in. Even I struggled to find anything interesting to say back in June. It does undo the fighting type weakness normal has, but then you have to deal with the other problems Bug types usually have. I still like my stick bug Pokemon idea though. Normal Rock presents a similar problem with fighting types, same with normal Steel. You can see why they chose not to introduce them just yet. Normal Steel would still fare well just because of how good Steel is defensively, and Rock could also be worse. Definitely better than normal Ice. Now that we're out of normal type hell, let's take a look at the rest. Fire Fairy is one that a lot of fans have actually expressed interest in. I've elaborated before about how this thing would inevitably be very powerful, both defensively and offensively, making it tricky to try to balance if it were to come into existence. Unless of course they make it intentionally overpowered by making it a legendary or something. It almost feels like the typing would perhaps warrant something grand like that. But if not, then it's hard not to imagine it being prominent in something like overused and competitive and ridiculous for single player content. The only way it wouldn't be is if it's given subpar stat totals or a really bad moveset. But I guess anything's possible. The design would also need to be a home run here. I mentioned a variant of Sunflora to be a bit different, but I could see them making some type of fire reptile creature with very mystical qualities to justify the fairy typing. Almost kind of like Skeledirge. Ice Poison is actually a typing I'd love to see eventually. The Poison half would help with Ice's problem with fighting types, a very common threat. Of course, it'd still have a bunch of defensive problems, but it also would have some really good offensive potential. There's also some potentially interesting Pokemon designs you can go with. In my previous Unused Typings video, I imagined a sort of Geoduck creature that would shoot toxins. But another fun idea that would aesthetically sell this dual typing would be any creature that is seemingly made of ice, but has some sort of visible purple liquid inside of it at all times that it can use on its opponents. The Pokedex entry can even have one of those dark, horrifying descriptions about how the poison is uncontrollably cold, yet burns through flesh and bone within seconds, leaving their repulsive remains as food for the Pokemon. See what I mean? It's crazy how they haven't tried to have a little fun with this one 9 generations in. With only 4 dual types left, let's talk about Fairy Ground next. I still love my pink Fairy Armadillo idea. The evolution line could start cute, but the designers could have the option to make it badass for its final form or still keep it pretty cute. This is what they ended up doing with Palmot, and I think it worked great. Gameplay wise, I really like this combo too. It's straight up immune to both electric and dragon, with 4 other resistances to boot. The most unfortunate thing about it defensively is that one of its 4 weaknesses is water, a very common typing. With Bug Dragon, once again, not much has changed as far as my thoughts on it. And yes, once again, you'll all hear Bug Dragon and you'll immediately think, oh yeah, a Dragonfly Pokemon. We conceived an evolution for Yanmega as Yanmaxa, a potential Pokemon for Legends Arceus, which would have made it Bug Dragon. But really? You can do a bunch of Dragonfly-like Pokemon that would qualify as this typing. It still has to deal with the weaknesses of being a bug type, but being able to have super effective stab attacks against psychic Pokemon is definitely never a bad thing. If the developers want to make this something that will do well in competitive though, it'll have to be in spite of the drawbacks of that bug typing's typical issues. For Ghost Rock, I think it's hard to top the idea of a tombstone. Literally just a tombstone. Well, I guess we already kind of got that concept in Houndstone, but that just ended up being a pure ghost type in the end. And if that wasn't good enough for you, there was also the idea of some spooky, ghostly body parts on it, like transparent arms or something. Yeah, spooky. We've been there already. Though a rock monster with ghostly elements like how Skeledirge turned out would have been cool too. Think Bouldergeist in Super Mario Galaxy. A great concept, design, and pun in the name. And once again, it's fine offensively, but all over the place defensively. It's even more impossible to tell how good this Pokemon would be just based on the typing. It would depend on every factor from its stat distribution, its move pool, and its ability. It really could be offensively mediocre, or it could be really powerful. Either way though, I'd still love to see this typing. Maybe even several Pokemon with it. Because I think aesthetically, there are so many great ideas you could go with. Lastly, we have Dragon Fairy. We of course have had this typing, but only as a Mega Evolution for Altaria. Since there is no base form Pokemon with this combo, I'm not fully counting it as a dual typing that's been used, especially since we really haven't actually been able to use Mega Altaria and current generations for years at this point. This is an excellent defensive typing, as the two types mostly complement each other. With 7 resistances and 1 immunity to other dragon types, you generally can't go wrong here. I speculated that a pseudo-legendary would have this typing, and I still think that will be the case if one of these is properly introduced. It's hard not to imagine some type of European dragon-looking creature with more elegant and angelic wings to be the design here. But they could also go with a smaller, cuter creature for something that isn't a pseudo-legendary. I think whenever they do introduce it, however, it should be tied to some kind of mythology within the region of its respective generation. Maybe something that is also based on a myth from the region it's based on in real life. And that's every unused dual typing after Scarlet and Violet, and my thoughts on them, as well as my thoughts on the new dual typings we saw introduced. It was fun to revisit this topic and speculate again with how these type combos would turn out. But what do you think? Which of these dual typings do you want most to be made official? I'd once again would love to hear your opinions on some of these design ideas. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching the video and for coming through and enjoying Scarlet and Violet with me. We've got so much content coming surrounding Gen 9 through the end of the year and beyond, including the top 10 strongest Pokemon, the best team for the games, and much more. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. When we get to 5,000 subs on the channel, we're gonna have a new series related to Scarlet and Violet that will be exclusive to there. So go subscribe. Also, if you're into fanfictions or Genshin Impact, check out Mystic Reads and Tybotchinary. I offer a ton of creative spoken word content over there, and I do a bunch of theories and lore videos surrounding Genshin Impact. So come join me over there at that float your boat. That's all for now. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time for more Scarlet and Violet content.